Hi friends, Rusty back with you here on Thursday. It is August the 1st. I hope you're doing well. Wanted to jump on, obviously we've got some pretty prolific storms happening in portions of Central Florida right now I wanted to talk to you about. And then obviously I want to turn our attention to the potential tropical system that's going to be moving our general direction as we get over the weekend as well. So a lot to get into here. Thanks for joining me. I appreciate you guys. First thing I want to start off with is what's happening on this Thursday afternoon. We've had some pretty rowdy storms through portions of the metro Orlando area, Lake County, Orange County, back down towards Osceola County. We did have a special weather statement here for the metro Orlando area that just expired. It is a very slow, rough drive home right now across I-4. Sanford, Vito, Altamont Springs towards downtown, Baldwin Park, Azalea Park, very heavy rain. The lightning is prolific again on this late Thursday afternoon. Watch out for some ponding on the roadways. We could pick up 1 to 2 inches of rain in a couple of locations, locally higher amounts to go along with that. Currently right now, we do have a flood advisory which is in effect for Orange County. It goes until 7:15, 1.5 to 2 inches of rain in a couple of spots, an additional 1+ is possible. This is pretty widespread across Orange County right now. It includes Orlando, Ocoee, Winter Garden, Windermere, Oak Ridge, Pine Hills, Universal Studios, Dr. Phillips, Bay Hill, Orla Vista, SeaWorld, Edgewood, Tangelo Park, Gotha, Lake Butler, Williamsburg, and Holden Heights. So it's a good chunk of the metro Orlando area, easily 1.5, 2 inches of rain, locally higher. Now, luckily, some of the intensity of this cell is beginning to wane a bit. So hopefully the rain will begin to taper off a bit here as we move deeper into the 5 o'clock hour and past 6 o'clock. We're still going to have the situation where we're going to get a lot of light rain to continue, but there are still pockets of very intense areas here, and you can see that right now. Winter Park, excuse me. I went down the wrong pipe just before I jumped on. Baldwin Park, Azalea Park, Union Park areas. These are the areas, higher lightning count, heavier rain, all the way up towards Fairview Shores, Orlando, Delaney Park. This is moving up, or excuse me, dropping off to the south to the east. So right across the 417 towards Beach Line of the Lee Vista area there. We're following some, boy, I'm going to have that issue. We're following some heavier rain and storms a little bit farther south now. Meadowwoods, Buenaventura Lakes, Kissimmee, Campbell, St. Cloud. Really nasty storm right here on the kind of far southern and western sides of Osceola County, the far northeast sides of Polk County. You can see all the lightning embedded within this, south of the Campbell area, east of Davenport and Haines City. Then you get into a special weather statement down here into the Bartow area, and look at all of that lightning there. About 600 lightning strikes in just the last 15 minutes. Excuse me 1 second. Figure I get all the coughs out and mute you guys real quick. And there's a lot of lightning. Some big lightning strikes right outside my house right now at 2 guys. I live in the western sides of Orange County, and it's still very prolific. But so all the way down towards Bartow, additional heavier rain right now. Bushnell, a couple of storms have redeveloped here towards the Deltona area. They're not as heavy, okay, but you can see a couple of flashes coming on right now across 44. That's going to try and get back towards places like Deltona, Sanford, and Lake Mary at the hour. So it's a rowdy Thursday afternoon across the area. Let me put this into motion. And again, you saw the special weather statement there. These storms are drifting very, very slowly right now. But obviously, we've had some excessive rainfall and a lot of cloud to ground lightning. Again, it's very rough right now, very slow drive for the commute. So hopefully everyone's heeding the precautions. Storms continue to be a little bit more intense in Osceola County, St. Cloud towards the Harmony area. Those are kind of merging with this bigger cell, and then it's dropping off towards the south. 91 is the turnpike, and again, a lot of lightning with this. So rowdy afternoon. These storms are kind of slowly moving off towards the south. Still could see some additional storms even as far north as the northeast sides of Lake County. There's Astor, Adelia Springs, and Umatilla. And again, this is more light to moderate activity for places like the Villages, Lake Pan, Wildwood, Webster, on off to those areas as well. Again, appreciate you guys tuning in. Let's go back out here. because the other big story is going to be the opportunity for what we're going to get out of this tropical system. All right. And I told you guys that I would always keep an eye out for this. And this is going to be something that we're going to have to be monitoring. If you're just tuning in here, newest information is this. We have Invest 97L over Hispaniola. We now have a very high 70% chance for development with this, okay? The numbers that you see are actually wind gusts right now. Let me just take those off real quickly. And again, it's going to be tracking up to the north and to the west. And again, you can see all of that active weather here. We even had some 40-mile-an-hour wind gusts. Leesburg had a 44-mile-an-hour wind gust as well. So, area in red, 70% chance of development from the National Hurricane Center, okay? This is something we're going to have to watch out for the weekend ahead, bringing some very heavy rain and maybe tropical storm conditions to us here in Central Florida. Let's take a look real quick. Oh, give me 1 second here. That's the Disney camera. Oh, I forgot I can't use the clicker. So that's Disney, the downtown, just near the Magic Kingdom. That doesn't look that bad right now. That's good news. So they haven't had some of the heavier rain. There we go. Let's look at a couple of different things here. This is the GFS model, okay? And this is going to be for the potential development of that Invest, which could become Tropical Storm Debbie, all right? And Debbie could be very slow as it gets into the northeast Gulf of Mexico over the weekend. Now, the GFS model over the last couple of days has had this system slowly trucking along and into the Gulf. And the European model has come back in line with that as well, okay? So here's how we expect this to play out. And I'm gonna let this loop one more time, and then we'll take a look at this. Again, Invest 97L has now developed over Hispaniola. We should expect to see this have very slow development as it interacts with Cuba. But once it gets into the southeast Gulf of Mexico, it should begin to wrap up. Now, the steering currents are going to be very weak early next week. So some of the models actually stall it out over the Big Bend, the west coast of Florida, okay? Loop it around, move it west, move it east, but nothing in a very fast forward speed. So flooding rains and tropical storm conditions and severe weather are all a possibility for us here in Central Florida. The GFS deterministic, which is what I'm showing you here, then actually develops this storm even stronger as it moves up the United States East Coast. But again, for our area, more than likely staying a depression or a storm, Debbie's the next name, but bringing impacts for several days in a row. Now, don't do that, Rusty. I'm going to take this clicker, I'm going to throw it away. I use it for Media Mundo, the other channel, which is why, again, you guys are seeing that. So this is the European model, okay? Let me try this one more time. Why is it doing that? Apparently I have to be off camera with this next one. That's fine. This is the European model. I basically threw these together for you guys because obviously this is something I want to talk about, so I apologize if the production is not 100%. This is the European model. The European model is weaker because the mid-level and low-level centers of Invest 97L never really come together until it gets into the east central Gulf of Mexico. But once again, the steering currents basically become null early next week. So even on the European model, what you're going to end up seeing here is a system that really slows down where the high rainfall potential becomes a big problem for us, okay? To go along being on the east dirty side of the storm and the opportunity for some severe weather to go along with it. Just like the GFS model, the deterministic model, the European, makes it a stronger storm somewhat off of our northeast coastline, Georgia coastline, South Carolina coastline. Not as strong as the GFS is, right? Because again, it's kind of weaker to begin with. But the biggest thing is we need this thing to keep moving. It can't sit over our area for too long or we really have some problems. This is the European rainfall totals over the next 7 days, okay? 5-6 inches of rain are absolutely possible along the west coast. But very broad brushed, we could have 3, 4, 6 inches of rain locally, all right? And that's over the next 7 days. Again, it's even higher here because this is where it stalls out a little bit. If this were to stall out over the Big Bend, Apalachicola back towards Cedar Key, we would be in store for potentially double this amount. I think the one thing that we have to keep an eye on here is just how fast this moves, but I don't expect it to move very quickly at all, okay? So let me spin myself back over to the big perspective here. And again, at this point in time, 97L is right over Hispaniola, all right? Very mountainous island. The interaction of the island, very high terrain, and the invest is not going to allow it to develop very quickly. But the biggest difference is that the European model keeps the mid-level circulation well south and in a very elongated area. So really the next 24 hours is very important. And the reason why is because if we can consolidate a center of circulation at the lower levels north of Hispaniola and north of Cuba, like the GFS does, that could be a stronger storm as it gets to the straits, okay? Now the center line, right, is right down the spine of Cuba, but that doesn't necessarily mean that the low-level center has to stay inland. It's really going to be interesting over the next 24 hours how this either consolidates or doesn't. Again, the GFS model has a relatively stacked low-level center of circulation, mid-level center of circulation. The European model is much more elongated, keeping it much more of an open wave until it gets into the southeast Gulf of Mexico. Obviously, now we have an invest, so now we have our tropical models running. So let's take a look at those. I'm going to pop those on screen. Bring this up. There we go. And I'm going to take off the formation zones. And I'm going to also dump, let me just pause this real quick. I think that's probably the easiest thing. And then let's just take off the lightning here as well. So now we're beginning to see our tropical models run. Again, they're all in very good agreement over Cuba near the straits. Now I want to be clear about this too. For folks in Southwest Florida and the Keys, it's going to be a rough couple of days, but this system is not going to wrap up, if it does, until it gets north of there. It's really places like Sarasota, Tampa, St. Petersburg north, okay? And now we're starting to see more and more of these tropical models run. Relatively good agreement until right about here. Some of them pull it east, right over Tampa and Orlando. Most of them bring it closer to the Panhandle and the Big Bend. But as we get into Monday, and let me just drop off these wind speeds as well because they're not relevant in the buoy data, in the ship's data. I got all that information. I'm ready to bring it to you guys, but we don't need it for this graphic. Up towards the Panhandle, the Big Bend. Then it's how quickly, if it does, move up to the northeast. Some of them curlicue it, some of them stall it, some of them actually bend it back out towards the west, okay? So there's not a lot of agreement with the models once we get into late Sunday, Monday, with the progression of what could be Tropical Storm Debbie, all right? And the other thing is that the intensity is also all over the place as well, okay? Not a lot of agreement with how strong this system could end up getting. But when we look at the rainfall totals on the GFS model, and this is what I can show you here. You can see that they're very impressive along the track. I mean, even up towards Lake City, because if this pulls inland, like the GFS says, right over the Big Bend, Cedar Key area, now you've got 4, 5, 6 inches of rain, locally higher than that as well. All the way down the West Coast. Inland in Orlando, on the GFS, it would be a few inches of rain, but typically, it always underdoes it a bit. We have training of storms here, Ocala, the Villages, Yahala, Claremont, Lakeland, but right along the West Coast, very significant rain here. And again, this is the deterministic where it actually has a little bit of forward speed and pulls back off of our northeast coastline. If it stalls, if it slows down, these numbers will be higher. So for Central Florida right now, out of this system, my main concerns are very heavy rain, flooding rain potential, gusty winds, tropical storm strength, and some severe weather as well. Because obviously we're going to be on the dirty eastern side of this storm. All right, let's take a look at the GFS reflectivity, and we'll talk about this. So again, next couple days, isolated, storms to widespread, just depending on the area, but all localized. Here it comes, right, late in the weekend. So we start to see it begin to wrap up right there on Sunday. And then the biggest question is, what happens in this area here? Does the low level of circulation move inland? Does the low level of circulation stall out right along the coast? Kind of a Harvey scenario that Texas saw. Now, I don't expect us to see that kind of rain, but you get the idea. But again, on the GFS deterministic, which is what this is, it then begins to pull up to the north and to the east with at least a little bit of forward speed. I'm going to take this out just a little bit longer in time. Someone's at my door. And you can see that wrapping up right now, okay? You can see that tracking up north and to the east. Now, eventually, for the Carolinas, okay, this could be a stronger storm. Maybe a week from now or later. So we're going to have to watch out for this. But I don't have a lot of confidence right now in the models beyond its trajectory up towards the Big Bend. All right? They're all dispersed as far as timing and intensity and location. They're all over the place. All right? So we're going to kind of take this step by step for you guys. But you get the idea of what this is going to potentially end up doing as it moves up the U.S. East Coast, if it does. Certainly there's some plausible scenarios where it stays in the Northeast Gulf of Mexico for a while as well. Let's look at the wind field. So these are the wind vectors associated with the system. You can take off the formation zone. Those will take just a second to come back on. And again, friends, I appreciate you tuning in. If you wouldn't mind doing me a favor and hitting the like button for me right now, I'd really appreciate it. If you're not a subscriber to Central Florida Weather Live, again, tracking live storms for you, but also tracking your tropics. Thank you for subscribing right now as well. So here it comes on the GFS model, right up the coast, okay? So this would be Sunday, and you can see, and I put the numbers on here for you, we're looking at sustained winds out of the south, 20, 25, in inland locations like Orlando and Sanford, but then tropical storm winds over 40, 50 miles an hour right along the west coast, all right? Now, because again, we're on the east side of the storm, we're on the dirty side, where we could potentially see some tornadic activity as well. So a severe weather threat would come along with this potential track. And again, timing of that would be probably Sunday and then into Monday as well. And it all depends on if it stalls out or not after that and then moves away. Now again, down the road on the GFS, for informational purposes, you get yourself an even stronger storm, potentially becoming a hurricane as it moves up the North Carolina coastline. The biggest question, if you will, is how far offshore it gets. Let's hope it gets far enough offshore, if this scenario plays out, that it stays and doesn't bring direct hurricane impacts to the Carolinas if it wraps up into a hurricane. But again, there's a lot of question marks between here and there, right? A lot of question marks between here and there. So back over to what's happening right now. Again, the intensity of the storms have come down a bit here in the Orlando area. That's good news. Let me bring the lightning back on for us. And again, good to see that these strikes aren't as significant. Let's see. Should get the counter to come back on here in just 1 second. There we go. Still 112 lightning strikes in this view. Heaviest cell in the metro Orlando area is across the 417, Azalea Park and Conway, moving up to the south and to the east. We're now left over throughout most of Orange County with just going to be light to moderate rain over the next couple of hours. It's just going to take a while to dissipate. Saw a storm trying to ramp up towards De Leon Springs and DeLand, but that has weakened a bit. Still some rain for the villages in Fruitland Park and Wildwood, Lake Pan, Bushnell areas as well. Now the nastiest cells are just off towards the south, okay? Kissimmee, St. Cloud, moving back down off towards our south. That's where we have the most intense weather right now. So places in Osceola County, like St. Cloud, just south of Buenaventura Lakes, 192 Harmony, Holopal areas, and then all areas off to the south as well. Mulberry, Bartow. We had a special weather statement here a little bit earlier, but that's been allowed to expire as well. So the storm intensity is coming back down a little bit. That's good news, right? We don't need any more rain. I'll say this, again, for our friends in Orange County, there is a flood advisory in effect until 7:15. We've had 1.5 to 2 inches of rain already in a lot of areas. An additional 1 to maybe 2 is likely, although now the rain is becoming lighter, right? Really intense storms a little bit earlier this afternoon. Luckily, though, they are on the lighter side at this point in time. But a flood advisory is in effect until 7:15. I would expect ponding on the roadways, and it's been a very rough drive home across the I-4 corridor, 417, 429, Beach Line, 408 in the Metro Orlando area. The areas that are included in this flood advisory are Orlando, Ocoee, Winter Garden, Windermere, Oak Ridge, Pine Hills, Universal Studios, Dr. Phillips, Bay Hill, Orla Vista, SeaWorld, Edgewood, Tangelo Park, Gotha, Lake Butler, Williamsburg, and Holden Heights. All of those under this flood advisory. And again, the light to moderate rain will continue through a lot of our area over the next couple of hours. You guys can easily see, by the way, on the Melbourne radar, the outflow boundaries of these storms. They should continue to propagate south and east. We will be getting into more rural areas of Osceola County. We'll see if they'll make their way all the way down towards Yeehaw Junction, right? But otherwise, again, we'll be left over with the lighter showers. If you're just tuning in, and again, this should be a little bit earlier, right? Are these new? Did they just issue this? Yeah, there we go. Okay, so we do have special weather statements in effect for this area. So here you go. Special weather statement the next 19 minutes. Let's get some information on that. So that goes until 6:15 for Osceola County, right? Mainly Lake Kissimmee area, north. Gusty winds knocking down some tree limbs, blowing around some unsecured objects. So wind gusts of up to 40, but the potential, they say, to even have up to 50-mile-an-hour winds. So not severe thunderstorm warning, but a pretty strong storm there. Also a pretty strong storm down here for western Polk and northeast Hillsborough counties. That goes until 6:15. So these both go until 6:15. This one is actually for winds of 50 miles an hour and some half-inch size hail, including places such as Lakeland, Plant City, Winter Haven, Bartow, Lake Wales, Auburndale, the airport in Lakeland, Lake Alfred, Eagle Lake, Polk City, Winter Haven Airport, Plant City Airport, and the Winston areas. Just a couple of areas there mentioned in that special weather statement. Again, the red is the potential tropical development area of our invest down here. And if you guys want a full report that I just put a video out for, find the Media Mundo YouTube channel. METEOMUNDO. Just did a nearly 30-minute video on this invest for all of the Caribbean and the Bahamas, and I talked a lot about Florida as well. Okay, friends, now that the weather has quieted down a little bit here in Central Florida, I'm going to say goodbye for now, but I wanted to come on and track these storms for you, but also keep a close eye, again, on Invest 97L and the potential for impacts here to Central Florida. Obviously, as we get closer to the weekend, If those impacts appear more likely, I'll be coming back on. Again, this is a live only channel, right? I might do some posts, keep you updated in that regard. But if the weather situation warrants it, I'll be back on live, and we'll be talking about both the summer storms in the afternoon hours, but also the evolution of this. And again, the next 24 hours is going to be crucial because we have to see if there's going to be more land interaction over Cuba. But all the models now are much more in agreement with a track up the eastern side of the Gulf of Mexico, potentially very close to the western side of our state, with the opportunity for some potential impacts to Central Florida, including at least 2 to 4 inches of rain, but locally higher, to go along with some tropical storm conditions in the far western areas, especially along the west coast, and then the severe weather threat as well. Friends, again, thank you so much for tuning in. I appreciate it. You guys have a great rest of your Thursday. We'll keep you updated here at Central Florida Weather Live with the impacts for our summer storms and this potential tropical system as we get to the weekend. Until then, friends, you take care. Have a great rest of your day.
you.